Maybe you're feeling like I've felt before and you just need to get out of the country you're living in, or maybe just the city or the state, with every bone in your body. I feel you. I've been there. If that's you, today's conversation is for you. I've lived in 10 different countries as an adult, and I've taken so many different paths to get there. We're going to discuss one of those paths today and see if it's right for you. So maybe you're feeling like I've felt so many times before, and you just really feel the urge to get up and move, get out of where you are for whatever reason. It might be political, but it might be just personal. It might be that you just need a change. And maybe you're spinning your wheels about the how. Maybe you've been researching online, but you don't have the right ancestor, you don't have a European Union spouse, you don't have easy remote work already lined up, or you don't have a job opportunity in the country of your dreams. And maybe you've gone as far as to see that there are countries that are relatively easy to move to for you. For example, it's relatively easy for an American to move to Albania for a year. But maybe that's not the country you want to live in, or maybe you don't have remote work, and so just getting up and moving to Albania, where you don't speak the local language, isn't necessarily the best solution for where you are right at this point in time. But today I want to discuss one solution that makes it relatively easy for you to move to your country of choice in a pretty quick timeline. That's studying. So let me take you back for a minute to my story. At age 18, I did a study abroad in Italy to study studio art. Now, I was able to do this study abroad as part of my bachelor's, and so I was able to apply my scholarship and basically go live in Italy for free, which was such an excellent opportunity. Now, I have to say, at 18, it was quite a shock. Just a few months before that, I had been living out in the countryside, and this is before smartphones and internet. And while I was eager to get out and see the world, there was also some cultural shock that I went through. But nevertheless, it was life-changing. And the very next year, I would go back and do another semester in Italy, in a different city in Rome. And after that, there were several times in my life where I used studying abroad as a means to go live in another country. But when I was first studying abroad, this was in the 1990s. And students, at least in Italy, were not actually allowed to work on their study abroad visas. And I'm also not sure, because this was decades ago, if at least studying abroad in the sense that I was doing it, where you're doing a semester at a different school, could even lead to anything more permanent in the country. So for me, it was really a temporary experience, and then I needed to go back to the US. Or, well, the second time I actually moved to the UK. But that's a whole nother story for a different day. Today, we're gonna talk about the good news for you, because it's no longer 1998 if you didn't know. And the good news is, for many, many countries, studying abroad gives you the right to work, including in the European Union. And I believe most countries here in the European Union will even let you work up to 20 hours per week. So really a half-time job, and will also often offer you a pathway to a more permanent situation after you've completed your studies, whether it's a job seeker's visa or an internship that can lead to employment, or other types of pathways to regularizing your status after you've completed your studies. And I know in some countries like France, if you do a master's and then you find a job in that specific field, then 2 years after you've started working, you already have the right to apply for citizenship. So studying abroad can be a very smooth pathway for those who want a more permanent life in the country of their choice. Now, this pathway is relatively easy for most people, assuming they have the means. But I do want to give a little bit of a warning. Some older applicants have found that their visa applications for studying abroad or student visas have been scrutinized a little more carefully. And this is just because, as a older student, you're a bit outside the traditional profile. And so the governments really want to make sure that you're actually in this program and that you're not just using the study visa as an attempt to come to their countries for something else and not study. Of course, you can have the intention to want to stay, to want to integrate, especially if you're learning the local language, but you might have to put in a little extra work. And this might just be as simple as making sure the program that you're applying to is one that's highly reputable. And also that they have a track record for helping their students get visas, make sure their hours requirements are sufficient and that they're accredited. So at this point, you might be thinking, well, hey, a second master's isn't really for me, and I don't know the local language in Bombovalia or whatever country you're looking at moving to. But the good news is there is a solution normally, and that's most countries do allow you to study the local language or maybe even a different language at a language school that's accredited and get enough hours to qualify for a student visa. So this means that you don't have to necessarily have a first master's or even a bachelor's to apply for a student visa. You can just enroll in a language program. And this also has the added benefit that you can probably start at any time of year. There's a lot of language institutes that start every week or at least every month, so you don't necessarily even have to be on a semester schedule to apply. And also, maybe you do want that master's or that bachelor's and you're thinking my language skills aren't good enough yet. Again, you can choose the pathway of first enrolling in a language program to get to that country more quickly, to get in that immersion environment, and then use those language skills to apply for a different program. Or the other option is if you're an English language speaker, and I'm assuming you probably are if you're watching this channel, there are programs in English all over the world these days. I'm not gonna decide whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, but for you as an English speaker, it's a great opportunity because you can probably find coursework in a field of your interest in English, and that kind of reduces the barrier to entry. So this might be a pathway you want to think about if you just got laid off from your federal government job, or AI has taken over your current job and you're unemployed. Maybe you do want to do some training or get a master's in ethics for AI or sustainable development, climate change. This could be the perfect pivot for you. So this studying abroad solution might be the perfect one for you if you're looking for a longer term move, not just getting out of town for a few months or doing a year hiatus, but if you actually have a target country in mind, you have a place you've always dreamed of living, you can use this pathway to get your foot in the door, to learn something, yes, and then also make local connections, do an internship in the area, learn the local language if you don't already speak it. And even in countries where the job market is not so great, if you're starting from the degree level, you're going to have a lot more opportunities than someone that just comes in from the outside and tries to put in a job application and has to prove that they're more valuable than anyone in the local country or for the EU, the entire European Union. You're already in the system. And so, if you selectively pick your internships, if you become involved, if you get to know your professors, this is going to set you up well for a stepping stone to restart your new career path or take a slight pivot or even specialize in your current field. I'm not saying this is easy, but this isn't easy anywhere, right? So this gives you a great pathway to do it. As I was mentioning, Often the benefit of a student visa is not only that it allows you to study and learn and live in the country you want to live in, but often student visas, especially in the European Union, do come with the right to work. I want to, though, address something from one of the comments from one of my viewers, and that is Arcaudio3, who mentioned on my video about moving to France as an artist. He says, I'm not an immigration professional, but I've been researching a lot as I plan to move to France as a music artist soon. Congratulations. Most corners of the internet say you cannot freelance while in France on a student visa, only salaried work is permitted. Now, this comment is correct. The video that I mentioned freelancing on as a student is a bit outdated, and this underscores the importance of verifying everything on the official government sites before you make a move, because this kind of information can change all the time. Now, at present, you can freelance as a student in France. That is true. You can also get a freelancer visa and be a student at the same time. That is also true. But it appears to be true that if you come in on a student visa, you cannot simultaneously start working as a freelancer. You can work on an indefinite or a definite contract for up to 20 hours a week, I believe. But again, please verify. And in some circumstances, getting a lawyer might be necessary. But you cannot simultaneously just come on the student visa and start working. Now, there are ways, for example, to get a student visa and then convert that status and start working as a freelancer. Or as I said, if you already have a freelance business, you can first apply as a freelancer and then you can still study on that visa. And then I know I took the time to clarify that in the comments and citing to the official government sources, which is always important. And then he asked back, do you know if it's possible for a US citizen to change visa status from student to artist talent passport visa while in France without graduating? Would I need to go back to the US to handle it? Now, French visa information is very contentious online. There are a lot of people making money off of it that have a lot of opinions. Generally speaking, you can change your visa status while in France, but it can take a while. The particular question about whether you can change your visa status from a student visa to the artist talent passport visa, I'm not exactly sure. You know, on the ANEF website, ANEF, you can request a change of status. So you can always go on the site and see if it's an option. Your chances of success for making that change is something I don't know. And I would generally recommend you consult with a lawyer. You don't necessarily have to pay to use their complete services, but it might be worthwhile to at least have a consultation. One of the lawyers that I know personally people have worked with to get changes of status in France is Daniel Tostada. I would recommend potentially a consult with him or anyone else that you can get referred to that you know someone that's had a good experience working with. I am not a lawyer in France. And I really want to thank you for the comment because this helps illustrate how complicated the finer details can be. So today we're really just talking about the broader pathway that's available to you. But once you make a decision, you're going to need to go a little more in depth to make sure that everything lines up for you. So I want to do a little recap to help you decide if this student visa path is right for you or even studying in another country on a different type of visa. So this path is great for people that want to get away sooner rather than later. As I said, it really is possible to start in most countries in a language program that might start any week of the year or at least on a semester basis. So you don't have to wait and apply for jobs for years and then wait a year to see if the company can sponsor you. This path might also be right for you if you're actually looking for a career change or a slight pivot a specialization, because if you're going to study anyway and you're looking to get out of the country, then this is perfect. And the good news is, if you're American like me, studying in another country is usually less expensive than studying in the United States. This pathway is also great for people who are looking to make a more long-term move to a specific country versus just a short-term getaway or a year abroad. It's also a great solution for people who don't already have remote work, so that, these digital nomad visas are not a solution for them, but also because of the example we discussed, that sometimes freelancing, which a lot of remote work is not permitted on a student visa. That being said, a little aside, if you are going for a student visa and it's by the semester, that does not mean you cannot work when school is not in session and you're not in the country. So you can still, for example, go to a country, be a student, but if you have some sort of remote work that's not full-time, you might be able to take that week vacation from school and go do a project in the summer, do a project in the winter, and still actually be doing remote work to support yourself, but gaining a pathway to more permanent residency and maybe even citizenship in the country of your choice. There are some people who say you can do remote work on a student visa without working permit, the same way there's a debate, at least for France, about whether you can do remote work on a visitor visa. I'm not going to get into that debate right now. As I said, you might need to consult a lawyer, but the bottom line is you can still work when you're not in the country. So you can be in the country for maybe 9 months out of the year studying and then still go away and do some work. This student pathway is also good for people that have some money, because it's going to take some money to study and live off of, or those who are comfortable with getting a student loan. And that might depend on how serious your motivation to study is, if it's really worth the investment for you. But money is always a factor that you need to think about. And I don't advocate for people being irresponsible with money, but a move abroad can really be an investment, and you can decide whether the loan is worth that investment in your life to go and live in the country of your dreams. So if you're getting really excited and you're thinking, okay, this is great, I'm gonna go get a student visa and move to the country of my dreams tomorrow, here are some things that you might want to research about the country of your choice and the program of your choice once you've found it. First, you're going to want to research what programs are available in the country of your choice, whether that's language programs or master's, bachelor's programs, if necessary, whether they're in English, if not, you can just go study the language for 4 or 5 years, but most of us don't have that kind of money. If you're going the student visa path, you're also going to want to make sure that your program is accredited and that you're going to be able to afford to sign up for the number of hours required to get a student visa. Just because the school offers student visas doesn't mean that the program you're in will qualify. Usually you have to be studying a certain number of hours, and for a language school, that's often at least 20 hours a week. If you're going the student loan pathway, you also want to make sure that the program you're on qualifies for student loans or other types of financial aid. Not every program will qualify, and this might depend on your country of origin and what kind of loans you're looking into. You also may want to look into other types of financial aid, such as scholarships, especially if you're younger or if you're mid-career. These might be available to help you fund your move abroad. If one of your goals is to actually work throughout the course of the entire program, then it's very important that you look at the rules on whether students can work on a student visa in the country of your choice. As I said, it's an option in a lot of countries, but not every country. Most countries will also restrict the number of hours you can work. So you want to see if the number of hours is going to be workable for you. If you have children or a partner, it might also be very important to look if the country you're looking into allows dependents or family members to come with you on a student visa. Again, a lot of countries do allow you to bring your family with you when you go to study, but you're going to want to look into that. And also, for family members, what are the rights of the people that come with you? Does you having a student visa give your partner a right to work? What are the schooling options for your kids? Obviously, life gets more complicated when, like me, you have kids. So you need to be looking more in depth if it's not just you making the move alone. Another important factor to look into is whether on the student visa application you're going to have to prove you have a certain amount of funds and how those funds need to be held. Do they need to be held in a certain type of bank account, or is it enough for you to just present a bank statement? And then, of course, verify that you actually have the amount of money needed to get the visa. And then finally, assuming this is not just kind of a getaway for a short-term scheme, you're going to want to look into what are your options to stay once you complete your program. Does this visa, for example, allow you at the end of the program that you're planning to take, convert into a job seeker visa, or allow you a preferential pathway into employment? So as I said, student visas can be a great way to just get out of where you are and get to a new country fast. Or even, if you're staying in the same country, studying can often just be a reason to get you somewhere else. And the great thing about studying is it can really help you build a network of friends, even if you're in a language program and all those friends are other expats or immigrants. They're going to be a network for you, people to invite you to parties, people to get to know, teachers you can ask advice. How do I pay my utility bill? Well, if you're going to even a language class, there's going to be someone you can ask those questions to. So it can be a really great way, a really warm welcome into a new city, a new country. As I said, you don't have to wait years to do it. You have to look at your own situation, of course, but I've used student visas in studying both abroad and in my own country as a great way to make a change. And it's definitely a pathway you want to look into. In the coming weeks and months, I'm going to be exploring other options to get out of town, to pick up and move. So if you're interested in hearing more pathways to going abroad, please subscribe. If you have specific questions or topics that you'd like me to explore, please leave a comment and I'll either get back to you in the comments or maybe make it part of an upcoming episode.